Hi there, and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. The best part about gardening is that we don't need to venture far to interact with wildlife on a personal basis. And it's very easy to design a certified backyard habitat that guarantees lots of friends. Today we'll show you how to do it. On tour, let's visit Howard Cheek, winner of the Nature Conservancy's photo contest.
In 2009, the Nature Conservancy awarded Howard Cheek the grand prize in the 2008 Nature Photo Contest for a shot waterhole landing.
Really what it boils down to is the time and patience you have, and the number of shots you have to click off to get that one shot. Like I have a series of action shots of birds, small birds in flight, and there's hundreds of shots like the one that won in the Conservancy. Couple of weeks of shooting every day for a couple of hours every morning, with the light at the brightest, and hundreds and hundreds of missed shots, but you just keep trying.
Howard finds his models among the wildlife that share 6 acres in Kempner with him and wife Mary. In their certified backyard habitat, Howard hunts every day, though now he's got a different focus.
I used to hunt, I have a shotgun, and I'd always, from a kid, even in California, I'd like to hunt. I was raised that way out there, and it just seemed a natural thing to do. But through the photography, I developed appreciation for the animals through observing them over long periods of time, and a connection. And now I can't hunt anymore. I shoot with the glass.
He's come a long way since he picked up his first digital point and shoot in 2003 and joined online nature photo groups to learn from experts. Now he's launched a new career. Howard's biggest learning curve was picking up wildlife behavior to be ready to catch them in action.
When a bird's going to jump off the branch, you have to watch it. If you want to get it in flight, just jumping off, you have to watch it and observe what it does right before it moves, those little subtle things.
At home, he protects and embellishes his natural setting. Since food and water are natural draws, especially in drought, he provides the craft services that direct the talent to his camera. He built a ladder to provide squirrel food for shots out the bedroom window.
That's the main problem with any wildlife or nature photographer, is getting close enough. That's why we use telephoto lenses, and we never can get quite. So that's why out in front, where I built the pond, I planted the trees, the fruit trees and stuff, right near my window, and have the luxury of shooting right from my house. So I bring them to me.
Howard provides nesting spots, too. When the new family arrives, he camps patiently in a chair. He's learned how to stage a shot, including a group of trees beyond the front window for a soft, natural background. Howard plants in containers, too, since they're easy props to move. He always has an eye to the background.
I've gone as far as out here shooting the hummingbirds to put artificial backgrounds in at times. I'll buy a poster board of a pale blue, or even a light, whatever, a white card sometimes, way off in the back. One time I used a kiddie pool turn on its side for the blue, put it way off to the back, behind where the bird's coming to the hot lips there, feeding the hummingbird. I set the pool back there by the shed, and it created a light blue background. Anything that is a light color is good for the photographer, because it'll help increase the shutter speed. Or I shoot toward the sky, like that swallowtail in flight, that I call graceful flyer. I grew the zinnia real tall, and it was in a barrel, so it was already elevated. And I got low and shot so that when the butterfly would come off the flower, I had sky for background. Anytime you shoot it to the sky, you can shoot fast, which I had to get enough depth of field and speed to catch it moving that fast. You've seen a swallowtail jump off a flower, they move pretty, and you have to use manual focus. Just get as much depth of field. I think that was f16, you know, and manual focus to the flower, because you can't my camera, as fast as it can focus, can't focus fast enough to catch it moving that. So I just manually focus to the flower and catch it in a plane of focus off the flower, you know, the same plane of focus, so it's in focus. That's how that works. That's my technique for the butterflies in flight.
Having the right lenses, from a macro for close-in portraits and a telephoto for the camera shy, is nice, but attention to lighting is the key to success with even a point and shoot.
Well, morning's always the best. The morning hours, I always try to shoot in the morning. Afternoon, but never usually during the midday. The light's flat and from directly above. There's no dimension to this subject, you know. So you want afternoon, it's warmer, or morning, before 10:30 is when I shoot. And that's what we do, you know, we paint with light.
On the computer, Howard spends more time on research than photo enhancement.
You have to go online and search. That's how you learn. You shoot a new bird, you have to find out about it, find out what it's called before you can put it on your website or post it anywhere. You have to give it a name. The way I've looked at it is, if I can just produce God's work, you know, and faithfully, so that it can be appreciated, you know, by people anywhere, even if, you know, it doesn't matter how many. I've done what I'm supposed to do as a photographer, you know. I can never please everybody. A lot of my work is you know, but you it's what goes inside, what goes on inside the individual over time, you know. Like I told you the things that makes you an observer, but it makes you feel more connected, basically. When the bottom line, at the end of the day, just feel more connected with nature by doing it.
Thanks for sharing your garden with us. And now we're going to turn our attention to one of my favorite topics, which is wildlife gardening. And I'm joined by Nance with the City of Austin Parks and Recreation Department, where she is the Wildlife Program Director, Conservation Director. And great to have you with us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, you used to be with the National Wildlife Federation, and in that role, you were encouraging people to take on the idea of creating backyard habitats.
That's right. I started as the backyard wildlife habitat intern and then became the education program manager, and my job was to educate and raise awareness about the importance of creating wildlife habitat.
Well, now you're trying to do that on a kind of a grand scale. Now, real briefly describe the city initiative to get not just individual homeowners, but entire neighborhoods to be thinking about that.
Well, about 2 years ago, the City of Austin decided that it wanted to become one of National Wildlife Federation's certified community wildlife habitat cities, which now there are 30 of these communities, and Austin is number 25. And so that started the shift toward trying to get the entire city on board with creating landscapes for wildlife in individual backyards, at schools, businesses, places of worship. And we had to get a certain number of habitats certified, and we had to do community projects and lots of education-related activities as well.
Well, the good news on all this is that gardening for wildlife is such a joy. Then I don't see why anybody wouldn't want to be involved in
Absolutely. It's a pretty easy sell. I mean, what more could you want than a yard bustling with lots of life and activity and beautiful flowers?
Actually, Allison, I have to say this is true, that my favorite time in the garden is in the winter, when the leaves are off the trees here. We have so many bird visitors coming through, and you know, the goldfinches coming down from the north, etc. I just love the wintertime, and it's the birds and it's the wildlife really that make the difference for me.
Absolutely. And it's the songbirds and hummingbirds and butterflies that most people are interested in trying to attract.
Mm-hmm. And so there's some good strategies for that. And so let's spend some time giving people ideas about that. Now, there are 5 kind of principles that you like to talk about when you talk about gardening for wildlife. Let's start with one that may not be the most obvious. That's sustainable gardening. What do you mean by sustainable? These are one of the 5 principles that you try to get people to embrace.
Right. So sustainable gardening is essentially gardening using less resources, not having as much of an impact on the overall environment. And so the National Wildlife Federation has outlined a list, a menu, if you will, of sustainable gardening practices that we hope that you're incorporating into your gardening. And so you have to do at least, I believe, 2 of those sustainable gardening practices. And so it's things like using plants that are drought tolerant or maybe xeriscape plants, composting, mulching, watering in the morning or in the evening, using drip irrigation.
Using fewer pesticides and herbicides.
Eliminating fertilizers and pesticides, because if you want to have butterflies, you need to eliminate those pesticides.
Right.
So there's a variety of sustainable gardening practices, and all of it is with the idea of just being a little bit easier on the land.
On the other side of the equation, those sustainable practices all are, I think, great common sense, really. And if you want life in the garden, use the kind of wise steps in terms of encouraging it and not discouraging it. But attracting in the wildlife is the other side of that. And there are a lot of things that you need to do to keep in mind that are really going to be successful strategies. And I think number one, which may not be the most obvious to a lot of people, but simple, is water.
Absolutely. Water is the key element. It's the element that most people are missing. Folks might have everything that they need. They might have the food, they might have the cover, they might have the places to raise young, they might be doing all those sustainable gardening practices. But if you don't have water, you can't have an official habitat, because that's the key ingredient for any wildlife landscape.
Yeah. So, whether it's a bird bath or a pond, either one, you need to have some element in there, like that in there. Right.
And providing water, like you said, can be quite simple or can be a little bit more elaborate. And so having a simple bird bath that's accessible to birds is an easy way to provide it. Having different levels of water in your landscape. So having a bird bath maybe that's elevated, coupled with a water source that's on the ground, whether it's a little pie tin or it's a saucer or something of that nature. But the key is that whatever water that you're providing in your landscape, it needs to be accessible and usable by wildlife. Yeah. So nothing too deep. So sometimes people have these troughs of
put some
water.
Gravel in the bottom.
Yeah, putting rocks and making it so that it's gently sloped, or where birds can come and light and be able to take a bath. And so always thinking about ways to make it. You have to think like a bird, or think like a lizard, and that's how they are more easily able to use the water.
I put a bowl in my garden, and it was funny this past summer. Every day I'd see the birds enjoying it during that horrible drought. And they'd get in there and they'd take their baths, they'd drink from it. And every evening the raccoons would use it to kind of clean up. I would see that they'd used it every single day. I would dump it out, refresh it, and it was a lot of fun, and it really worked. It was the most important thing in the garden out there to the critters, I think.
And ponds will attract even larger wildlife. Some folks have reported having blue herons coming and fishing.
Yes.
So if you have some sort of water feature, a pond, and you have koi fish, and you have herons nearby, which if you are providing a pond like that, the birds and herons and other species will come and find it. So something to keep in mind, depending on the size of your water source, you will probably encourage larger size animals.
Well, food is another essential. And that comes in all different forms.
Yes. And so, sometimes when you think about wildlife and birds, you think about bird feeders and supplemental feeding, and let's go buy bird seed for the birds. But really the best way to provide food for wildlife is through plants, and not just any old plant, but native plants, plants that have been there for thousands and thousands of years and have co-evolved with local wildlife to be able to meet their nutritional needs, etc. So native plants are the foundation of any wildlife habitat.
Yeah, plants with berries, plants with seeds, you name it, plants with nectar.
Yes, nectar, pollen, sap, leaves, buds. If you think about all the things that plants provide, it really is quite a medley of food sources. And you want to provide food throughout the season. So you want to have some kind of food either blooming, fruiting, bearing, providing acorns, etc., throughout the year.
Right. Well, there are two of the essentials that I kind of think of in a similar way, one is cover, which is places to hide, and also places to raise young. And in my mind, those kind of go together.
They go together, and they also go together with food, because essentially our food sources, all these plants that we're talking about, also provide cover. So that's one way, is through actual plants. So specifically evergreen plants are key because they provide shelter during the winter and provide year-round kind of hiding or cover areas. Cover can also be a brush pile, it could be a hedgerow, it could be a rock wall, it could be mulch. Places to raise young can also be plants, etc. One thing that comes to mind would be providing larval host plants for butterflies in your landscape. That counts as a place to raise young for butterflies, but also providing, if you have one, a dead standing tree. You know, maybe that's not so appropriate in an urban environment, but certainly folks that are in a more rural setting might be able to afford to girdle a large Chinese tallow or China berry or something, and leave it as a dead standing tree, especially ones that have cavities. And then there's also the opportunity to, you know, buy nesting boxes so that you can kind of be a part of providing cavities where they've been lost in nature.
All right. Well, people can learn more about it. There's a website that the city's created, and that is keepaustinwild.com, which is perfect phrase for a wonderful program. We really do appreciate you coming on board, and we hope that the folks out there in the neighborhoods throughout the city and the region really will get involved in this wonderful effort. Thanks so much for being a part of Central Texas Gardener.
Thanks for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
All right. Coming up next, it's our friend Daphne.
Hi, and welcome to Down to Earth. Our question this week is on late season tomatoes that just never grew. Our viewer asked a question about why the tomatoes weren't growing in an area that had grown beautiful tomatoes over the summer. And that is a great question, and you might be noticing that in your garden. It's probably because the sun is much lower in our sky during the winter, and perhaps the sun is being blocked by your neighbor's house. And that would be one reason. Also, we had a lot of cloudy, rainy days this fall, which was very good to help with our drought. But it does decrease the growth on those plants that require full sun to grow, especially if the plant is a small seedling that you planted only a few weeks before we got that fall rain. So a full season vegetable that might have done great in the summer, you might be noticing struggling during the winter. And we also had some very cool nights this fall. Our plant this week is bronze fennel, Feniculum vulgare rubrum. This is a beautiful herb to put into your garden. And even if you don't like to cook with it, it's a very attractive plant, and it's also a great butterfly host plant for many butterflies, including the swallowtails, which are nice and pretty to see in your garden. This herb only gets about 3 feet tall at the most here in Central Texas, and only 18 to 24 inches wide. So space it close together, and also plant with other fennels, especially if you're putting it in an area, and continuing with our theme of putting vegetables and herbs right out with your other perennials instead of separating them in your garden. It also needs full sun and rich, well-drained soil. If it gets too much water or the soil is not draining properly, you will notice problems with this plant, and it will rot and die. To do in your garden this week, you want to go ahead and deadhead those perennials that have gone to seed, your Gaillardia and maybe your rock rose, unless you want to see seedlings growing all over your garden this winter and next spring. You can also collect those seeds and give them away, or plant them next spring, where you might want them to be better in your garden. It's also time to plant strawberries and mums. If you had some place where you had some beautiful vegetables planted in your garden and you want some winter color, you don't really want to focus on winter vegetables, mums are a great colorful plant to put in your garden. And also it's time to chill your crocus and your daffodils to put out into your garden in just a few weeks. Those bulbs do need about 6 to 8 weeks of chilling to produce really nice full flowers for you next spring. And in your refrigerator, don't place those near any other vegetables or fruit. Separate them in a paper bag if possible, because those vegetables and fruit are dying and giving off a gas called ethylene, and that would cause your bulbs to react poorly. For more plant tips and to contact your extension office, please visit klru.org/CTG.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with our producer, Linda Lamas-Verda, and a special guest, Cindy Arredondo.
Welcome to Backyard Basics. I'm Linda Lamas-Verda, the producer, and I'm here today as a special thing because we have a special guest, Cindy Arredondo from Desert's Tropics. We met Cindy last summer, and she has the greatest ideas for decorating indoors this holiday season with succulents. So we asked her to come on and give us a few ideas. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
This is so fun. You know, we all tend to do the same kind of holiday thing every year, but you have kind of a different spin on this. Why?
A lot of times people use poinsettias and hollies during the Christmas season, and those are fabulous. I just like the textures and the colors and the vibrance of the succulents. And during the summertime, they work great because they're, low water plants. But during the winter time is when they get their color, and that's a great time to pop them into a container and really appreciate them inside the house so that you don't have to worry about protecting them.
I like that. And you have come up with such creative ideas. I am so not craft oriented, but I know I could do this. And where did you get all these cute little baskets? Did it cost a fortune? You have to do all this fancy stuff?
Not at all. I went to a few box stores and looked at what they had, and it was minimal selections. And then I went to resale stores like Goodwill or Savers and found just amazing little wicker basket containers or wagons.
Yeah, they're just so fun. This little wagon is so cute. I mean, I could just see that sitting, maybe not by the fireplace, but on an entry table or something. And speaking of, where would you put these? Where do you place them in the home for their good care and for your furniture's care too?
Well, for their happiness, they definitely want to be in a bright, well-lit area with great ventilation. They need not necessarily direct sunlight, but anything bright and diffused. You can, when you're ready to entertain, have guests over, move them to where you want to decorate.
Excellent.
And then when you're done entertaining, you can put them back in their growing situation. So really anywhere you want to, but unless you're entertaining in a bright, well-lit area.
Okay, and we want to keep them out of drafts and, of course, away from the fireplace.
Exactly.
And
any source of
pets.
heat.
Do we need to keep them away from pets? Are these possibly hazard to animals?
These, I have been told, are a cat's favorite meow to play with. And so if you do have a pet that tends to like to paw around, definitely go ahead and raise them above pet level. Other than that, they're non-toxic, so they should be just fine.
Super. Now, if you go and find these cute little baskets, and we all have a ton of these things somewhere, you collect all this stuff, or those little Christmas cookie containers and all that kind of stuff. But what do you put them in the bottom before you put in the soil?
Go ahead and use either a coconut husk liner or the peat moss liner.
Super idea. And then what kind of soil mixture?
Anything well draining. So you can use a pre-mixed, Schultz puts out a bagged cactus and succulent mix.
Okay.
However, if you want to use, if you want to make your own, go ahead and use a really nutritious rose soil or flowering soil. Go ahead and add crushed granite or perlite. Haydite is a fabulous amendment because it's light, and you can also use it as a top dressing.
That's the expanded shale, haydite.
It's expanded shale, yes. Yeah. And you'll want to use equal amounts of soil, sand, and then another form of grit, be it terracotta pots or the haydite perlite.
Okay, something. And then for watering, how often and how do you water? You've got these cute little things. How do you get in there and keep it watered?
Well, you can water it two different ways. One, you can go ahead and mist them because some plants may want more water than others. Or if you are like me and you don't have time to take individual care of each and every plant, then thankfully succulents are very durable, so they will go ahead and wait until you're ready to water them. So you just wait till you're ready, take them to the sink or the tub or outside of the patio, mist them off really well so that it saturates the container, and then leave them out there to dry for a few hours, and then you can set them back.
Super. And what I've seen, what you've done here, Cindy, is like in any garden arrangement or any floral arrangement in your house, you kind of mix up textures, put a little bit of height, add all these kind of different things, and so you create kind of a fun little setting to enjoy for really months to come.
It really is. And the great thing about them is that once you get them set and they grow really well, they overgrow the pot, their roots will always want to survive, so you can separate them later on and reuse them in other arrangements.
Super.
Or individualize them.
Okay, well, thank you so very much for giving us some great ideas, and we appreciate your coming on. Thanks a
for
lot.
having me.
Check out klru.org/CTG for online video, more tips, and our weekly blog. Next week, get ideas to warm up winter. Until then, I'll see you in the garden. Visit klru.org/CTG to learn more about today's program, upcoming events, and to sign up for our electronic newsletter. Check out John's how-to tips and visit Trish's Corner for ideas inside and out. Get growing at klru.org/CTG.